Welcome back to Silk Warrant. Today in this story, my father called me a failure. Tonight, he's in my restaurant.
The last table in my restaurant was set for one. My father had done it. Raymond Marsh, the man who once told me the only thing I'd ever cook was disappointment. The kitchen smelled like browned butter and thyme, the same herb he used to grow in a clay pot on the windowsill that I was never allowed to touch. He doesn't know whose table he just walked to. But I do. I've known for 3 years. There is a piece of paper in my office, folded, creased, old, that he signed. And tonight, that paper is going to do the talking for me. I need to take you back to a kitchen that wasn't mine. I was 19. My mother had been gone 2 years, and Raymond, Dad, had decided that grief was best processed through control. His house, his rules, his verdict on everything I was and wasn't. I cooked dinner every night, not because I loved it, not yet. Because if I didn't, the silence at the table was a specific kind of cold I couldn't survive. One night I made lamb. Slow braised with rosemary and shallots and something I'd read about in a library cookbook I'd checked out twice already. Raymond cut into it, took one bite, set down his fork. "It's fine," he said. For someone with no real training. Fine, for someone with no real training. I turned back to the sink and I let the hot water run over my hands until I felt something. I applied to culinary school 6 months later. Raymond found the application on the kitchen table. I'd left it there on purpose, I think, and he read it like it was a parking ticket. Then he looked up at me. "You don't have the discipline for this, Callie. You never finish what you start." He wasn't entirely wrong about my history. I'd quit piano at 12. Dropped off the track team at 15. But what he didn't account for, what he never accounted for, was that those things bored me. Food did not bore me. Food was the one place where I stopped disappearing. 4 years later, different city, different version of the same argument, I got into the program. I didn't tell Raymond until I was already enrolled and paid. He called the school. I still don't know exactly what he said, but my admissions advisor, Deborah Price, pulled me aside one afternoon and told me quietly that she'd received a call from a family member expressing concerns about my stability. That was the word he used. Stability. I smiled at Deborah. I said, "I appreciate you telling me." And then I went back to my station and I broke down a whole chicken faster than anyone in my cohort. I graduated. I staged at 3 restaurants, unpaid, exhausting, formative in the way that only something genuinely hard can be. I worked the line at a bistro in Nashville for 2 years. I saved. I spent the savings. I saved again. During all of this, Raymond and I spoke maybe 4 times. Each call followed the same structure. He'd ask how things were going, I'd tell him, he'd find the one thread in my answer that he could pull at. A bistro. That's not really fine dining, Callie. How many covers are you doing a night? That's small, isn't it? Do you have equity? Because working in someone else's kitchen isn't the same as building something. His habit, his tell, the thing he always did, was to repeat your last word back to you as a question. You'd say, "I'm building something," and he'd say, "building," with that half-second pause, and the pause was the whole point. It wasn't curiosity. It was the sound of a ceiling being installed above your head. Then something happened that Raymond did not predict, because he couldn't have, because it required someone believing in me, and believing in me was not in his skill set. A woman came into the bistro on a Tuesday in March. She ordered the duck confit. She ate slowly, deliberately. She asked to see the chef. That was me. She shook my hand across a small table in a half-empty dining room, and she introduced herself. "I'm Callie Vance. I have a property in Chattanooga that I've been trying to turn into a restaurant for 2 years. I haven't found the right person." I think I just did. Callie Vance was 71 years old, and she had more conviction than anyone I'd ever met. She wasn't offering charity. She'd done her research. She'd eaten at the bistro 3 times before that Tuesday. I didn't know that until later. She had a contract. She had a vision, and she had one condition. "I want your name on the door," she said. "Not mine, yours." I called Raymond that night. I don't know why. Old habit, maybe. Or maybe I still needed the test. Still needed to hear what he'd say when the thing he'd told me was impossible was standing right in front of me with a contract attached. "A restaurant," he said. There it was, the pause. "Do you have the capital for this, Callie? Because if a leaner, whoever she is, pulls out, you're exposed." Do you understand what exposed means in this industry? I understood what exposed meant. I'd been exposed my entire life and I had not collapsed yet. I signed a leaner's contract 3 days later. The contract had a clause I added myself in the margin, handwritten, that a leaner initialed. One line, "It matters." We opened Marsh & Co. On a Thursday in April, 2.5 years after a leaner sat down at my station in Nashville. Marsh was my name, not Raymond's legacy. Mine. The first year was the kind of hard that doesn't make it into reviews. A supplier went under in month 3. I lost my sous chef to a bigger operation in Atlanta. I had one write-up in a regional magazine that misspelled my name and used the wrong photo entirely. I didn't call Raymond to tell him any of this. I also didn't call him when the James Beard nomination came. I'm going to say that again so it lands. The James Beard nomination came, and I did not call my father. Because I already knew by then that his response would be a question. A nomination, and the pause, and the ceiling. The morning the letter arrived, I was making staff breakfast. Scrambled eggs. The kind Raymond always called basic. I read the letter standing at the stove, spatula in hand, and I didn't say a word to anyone in that kitchen for 4 full minutes. Deborah Price saw the announcement online. She emailed me. One line, "I always knew." I printed it out and pinned it to the board in my office next to the contract. The piece that changed everything ran in a national publication. It was titled "The Quiet Room: How Callie Marsh Built a Restaurant Out of Refusal." The journalist had spoken to 12 people. Staff. Former colleagues, a leaner, Deborah. She had tried to reach Raymond. He hadn't responded. The piece didn't mention him by name. It mentioned an early family member who discouraged her path. That was all. One clause, buried in paragraph 4. But Raymond Marsh is a man who reads carefully, and Raymond Marsh read that piece. I know because 6 weeks later, his name appeared in my reservation system. He booked under his own name, Raymond Marsh. Party of 1, 8 o'clock on a Friday. My floor manager, Tomas, came to me in the kitchen Thursday morning with the printed reservation in his hand. "Do you want me to handle this one?" he said. I looked at the paper. I thought about it for exactly as long as it deserved. "No," I said. "Seat him at table 12. Give him the full menu. Bring him the amuse-bouche. Don't tell him anything. Table 12 is the last table in the room. It has a single chair facing the kitchen window. I put that table there on purpose. I wanted guests to see that a kitchen in full flight is one of the most precise and human things on earth. I wanted Raymond to watch that and know I was in it. Friday night, 7:58 p.m. The kitchen smelled like browned butter and thyme. I watched him come in through the pass window. He's older. He moves carefully now, the way people do when their body has started to give them notes. He wore a jacket I recognized immediately, gray wool, slightly too large in the shoulders, the one he'd had since I was 12. He sat down at table 12 and he looked at the menu for a long time. He ordered the lamb. Of course he did. I plated it myself. Slow braised with rosemary and shallots and thyme from a clay pot on the windowsill of my office. Tomas brought it out. I watched through the window. Raymond cut into it, took a bite, set down his fork, and then he did something I didn't expect. He put his hand over his mouth, not to speak, to hold something in. I came out of the kitchen. I walked to table 12. I sat down across from him in the chair I'd had Tomas placed there earlier that afternoon. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. "Callie," he said. And he paused, but this time the pause was different. This time it wasn't a ceiling. This time it was a man who had run out of words. I reached into my jacket pocket, and I put the contract on the table. The original, folded and creased, the one with the handwritten margin clause that a leaner initialed. I turned it to the page he needed to see. The clause read, "Ownership of Marsh & Co. is held solely by Callie R. Marsh in perpetuity, irrevocable." He read it. He looked up at me. Why are you showing me this? Because you told me I'd never build anything that lasted. You were right that it was hard. You were wrong about everything else. I stood up. I smoothed the front of my chef's coat. I looked at him one more time, not with anger, not with triumph, with something quieter and more permanent than either. Desserts on the house, I said. It's the only thing I haven't named after myself yet. I walked back through the kitchen, and the smell of browned butter and thyme followed me all the way to the door of my office. Same as it always does, except tonight it smelled like something I'd earned twice. I don't think about Raymond the way I used to. There's no heat in it anymore, just information. He taught me, without meaning to, that the people most certain of your limits are usually the ones who stopped testing their own. I built Marsh and Co. out of a word I refused. Fine. Fine for someone with no real training. I spent a decade turning that word into something that required a reservation. The name on the door is mine. The time on the windowsill is mine. The table at the back of the room, table 12, one chair, facing the kitchen, that's mine too. Everything I was told I couldn't hold, I held. The people who doubt you loudest are usually the ones most afraid of what happens if you prove them wrong. If the people who shaped you earliest had to describe who you are today, would their version match the person you actually became?